right? And there are a lot of things that happened. I just thought that this would be an interesting lead up to that COBIT should figure in that list of things in 1996. So we are actually celebrating the period from 1996 to now. A lot of exciting things have happened, and I'm sure we'll have interesting information. I also would quickly like to touch upon this. This is the timeline that we are talking about. If you're interested, you can go and look it up. A more detailed, more clearer version of this is available on the ISACA website, right? And COBIT has grown, and I'm sure the speakers today and as part of the panel discussion will discuss on these things, on how the growth has happened and what should we look for in the future, right? It's always interesting to look at the past, but it's also interesting to look at the future. Before I hand over to Mr. Rafiq, this is broadly the agenda that we have. We will have two speaking sessions, one by Mr. Rafiq and the other by Mr. Ailu. Mr. Rafiq will talk about COBIT Flashback into the future for actionable insights, and Mr. Ailu Namnath will talk about a practitioner's perspective. And last but not least, we have a panel discussion where Mr. Rafiq and Mr. Ailu will be joined by Mr. Mahendran and Mr. Babu Jaindran, and hopefully we'll have an interactive panel discussion. We also hope to have dinner on time, so we request your support in making sure that there is enough Q&A, but also enough bandwidth left that we can have dinner on time, considering that it's being a weekend, right? Okay. Now I will also take the privilege of introducing Mr. Rafiq. Please give me a minute. Honestly speaking, I don't think this audience needs an introduction to Mr. Rafiq, but I will still do it. I will follow the time-honored tradition. Mr. Rafiq is a chartered accountant with special expertise in data analytics, business intelligence, and COBIT. In a career of over 30 years, he has played varied roles as a CFO, CIO, IT implementer, consultant, IT auditor, software architect, and COBIT trainer. He is a promoter and managing director of Vincent Infotech Limited, which specializes in data analytics and BI solutions. He has been a member of ISACA from 1996. He was a founder, secretary, and later president of ISACA Bangalore chapter. He has been a volunteer for ISACA USA in various committees since 1996. He has also been a part of the 12-member COBIT 5 task force, which designed and created COBIT 5. Right? So whatever you hear today is going to be from the horse's mouth, and I'm sure that you will utilize the time fully in asking whatever queries and questions you have to get clarification from Mr. Rafiq. He has conducted a lot of workshops both for the Bangalore chapter and across various ISACA chapters. He has the distinction of conducting more than 300 days of training on IT audit, COBIT, and computer-aided audit tools for both public and private enterprises. He has made presentations in international workshops and conferences in over 15 countries. With that, I will hand over to Mr. Rafiq. Sir, over to you.
Thank you, Raghu, for a very interesting introduction and giving a preview of COBIT from the past to the future. If you have seen the title, the title looks a little strange. We always say flashback to the past. Now I am talking about flashback into the future. And I am very particular that we should learn from the past so that we can actually implement the present, which will impact the future. And that's the perspective which I want to bring about as far as COBIT is concerned. I do not want to spend too much time in the history or story about what COBIT is all, when it was done, what happened. Now I will be taking it from the perspective learning, okay, what happened in the past to see how best we can take it in the future. Looking at one of the slides which Raghu showed, you might have seen the gorilla saved a 3-year-old child. If you have read the newspapers recently, one of the gorillas was shot dead. When one of the boys fell inside, okay, so the gorilla was shot dead. Now they did not even wait for the gorilla to take action. They decided that, okay, I think we can't wait, we have to shoot the gorilla. And that is supposed to be a very wild gorilla, very famous. What does it show? Trust. If you look back 20 years back, okay, 20 years back there was a particular trust in animals also. Nowadays we have become so much paranoid about risk and security that we do not want to trust. Like if you see in America, first you shoot and then you ask questions. And that's what has happened. Now, so COBIT is concerned, there have been a lot of interesting developments. What I would like to do is, I would like to give you a perspective of COBIT from different angles. I have gone to Niagara Falls. How many of you gone to Niagara Falls? You would have seen probably a photo or a video of Niagara Falls, or you would have visited there. Okay, there's nothing like actually experiencing Niagara Falls. I had the opportunity to visit this case, Niagara Falls, because one of my relatives there about 4 or 5 times. And every time I had a different experience. Because every time the water is new, the way it falls is completely new. Okay, you can get a different perspective of the Niagara Falls. Once when you stand near the railing, okay, you experience the flow of this water, you hear this one. No, it's a completely different experience. Now you sit in the restaurant and then you see the water flowing. That's a different perspective. There's one more Sky Tower restaurant where you can sit on the top and then you can see the Niagara complete overview of this one. Okay. Now you can also go in the boat, and the boat will take you very near to the Niagara Falls. So you can experience the water falling. You can see the complete power of the water. Okay. Next, you can also go under the Niagara Falls. There is a small mountain where you can go inside and experience the waterfalls. And I also took a helicopter ride around the Niagara Falls. All of them is the same Niagara Falls, but they give you different perspectives. So as far as COBIT is concerned, it all depends on from which perspective you're looking at. So if you're looking at perspective from hands-on, then I think it's important that you need to get experience personally. Okay. So what I would like to do in this particular session, this is a brief session, I'd like to give you a quick overview of what COBIT is all about, how I have used it. These are the 4 aspects. This agenda, I think Raghu has already covered. These are the 4 broad aspects I'd like to cover. So we're getting in the past to look at the future and primarily to pick up some actionable insights. Now you have sacrificed your weekend and you come here and probably you had certain perspective what you want to learn. I would like to see that you're able to get value from your presence. So we'll also look at what is the flashback all about, how the COBIT has transitioned over 20 years, what is changed and what has been the constant. And looking and learning from the past, what is that which will continue in the future? And the way technology is changing, the way the digital world is changing. Will COBIT remain still relevant? What will be relevant? How you can use and drive the COBIT knowledge to actually create a new feature. That's what we'll be able to learn. We'll also look at COBIT. I'll share some of my experiments and story of how I've used COBIT, how I learned. Probably that could also give you some insights. Next, we'll look at COBIT, because I was involved in the creation of COBIT in terms of the design. I'll also share my perspective how COBIT is actually designed. We spent over 3 years to make this COBIT 5 document, taking the COBIT earlier publications and various other framework. I'll give you the philosophy of what is the design thinking behind this one. We'll also look at some actionable insights which you can implement and use. Let's look at the first part where we're looking at COBIT, a flashback in the future. One important message which I'd like you to take at the end of this particular session, that COBIT has continued to evolve, and it has evolved with the perspective that you can remain ahead and be continually relevant. And the relevance is not only from an enterprise perspective, but also from a personal perspective. If you've got the knowledge about COBIT, you will find that you'll always remain ahead of the competition. For that, it's important that you know the principles, the philosophy of what COBIT is all about, and you should also know how to dive down and pick up the content, the best practice or the knowledge repository. You should be able to pick up from the knowledge repository and use it. And I would like to give you some tips on how you can actually do that. Now, this is a quick overview of how COBIT has evolved over the 2 decades. 1996, the primary focus was on the audit community. For me, when I started my profession, I think when I saw COBIT, for me it was a game changer. Now I found using this knowledge, I could actually compete with the best in the world. Because I used to compete, when I started my IS audit career, I used to compete with Big 4 firms and many other IT companies and IT experts. Now when I saw COBIT, I found this is a one-stop shop, which can give me the knowledge at one place, which can be customized and used across various organizations. And I've used COBIT for, let's say, auditing ERP software. I have used COBIT for auditing banking software. I've also used COBIT for auditing ERP software in an IT company, and also for a bank, for their banking software, for the banking solution, for an ERP in banking, which is called Bank 2000 at that time, which became Pinnacle, and various other assignments. Then we came into COBIT 2, which was more focused on controls. We had this control objectives, which became more prominent. We also had this control practices. We also had COBIT 3, which is also a big game changer. It came in 2000, and for taking COBIT to the next orbit, COBIT 3 played a major role, and one of the key components which came in was called as the COBIT management guidelines. The SOX also came into the picture, and many organizations were implementing SOX. And one of the things which was used, if you look at two primary frameworks which are used for implementing SOX, one was COSO and the second one was COBIT. And there are a lot of IT companies who profited extensively from the knowledge of COBIT and COSO, because they used this as a framework for developing controls, which were used for benchmarking whether the controls are available, adequate, and appropriate. And it also became a document which could be used internally by the management for mapping what is the existing controls and what are the gaps, and they could actually help in implementing the controls as required. COBIT 3 is where we are. COBIT 4 is what came in, where the focus shifted to IT governance. There I said, okay, it's not about management all along. IT is not the prerogative only of the IT department. It has become an integral part of the business enterprises, or any enterprise for that matter. So it's important that the senior management has to be involved in ensuring that IT is channelized to meet the strategic competitive advantage. And that's where COBIT 4 provides the governance perspective. And COBIT 5 brought in a paradigm shift, where we also brought the concept of governance of enterprise IT. It is no longer treating IT as one particular department. The idea was IT is an integral part of any enterprise. Remove IT, the enterprise ceases to exist. And IT was the key differentiator, because IT, everybody was automatic. Now it's important that IT should be a key differentiator for enterprises. And that's where COBIT came in with COBIT 5, and that's where we had this governance domain also. Now this is the perspective of COBIT old. If you see the COBIT 3 and COBIT 4, this was the famous COBIT dimension we had, where we focused primarily on the three dimensions, which was the quality, fiduciary, and security. Security focused on confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Fiduciary focused on compliance, fiduciary compliance and reliability, and quality focused on effectiveness and efficiency. These are the 7 dimensions, or these are called as the information criteria, or the business requirements based on which information was analyzed to check whether the controls are available, adequate, and appropriate. We also had this process structure, which was there, where we had this domain, process, and activities. Right from the evolution of COBIT, right from the first edition, you find this concept of process orientation, which was there, has always been constant. Which means you have a COBIT 5 document now, which is a separate publication called COBIT 5 process publication, where right from the beginning, when control objectives were there as a separate document, which are updated every 2 years. And then when COBIT came in, one of the key differentiator was the process dimension which came in, the process orientation which came in, which ensured that when you looked at a business process which was automated, you did not look at the enterprise in terms of a particular function. You did not look at IT in boxes. That okay, you're looking at the database, you're looking at operating system, you're looking at a firewall or a router. You looked at the business process which are there and looked at it end to end. And that was the concept which was brought in COBIT. You also had the IT resources. So you could look at evaluating the information criteria from different perspectives. From the perspective of the IT resource which are used, or from the perspective of the business process domain. And this is the logo of COBIT at that time. Then we had one more important document which is called as the COBIT waterfall and the navigation aid, which helps you to navigate inside COBIT. At that time we had 4 domains: plan, organize, acquire, implement, deliver, and support, monitor, and evaluate. These are the 4 domains. And we had this, for every process, there is a particular structure in which the information is supposed to be evaluated. You looked at the control of a particular IT process from the perspective of checking whether it satisfies the business requirement. And this was enabled by having control statements in place within the organization, and you evaluated it using the control practices which are given in COBIT. So you had the control objectives and the control practices below it, which were used as benchmarks after customization for the enterprise as required. Now let's look at COBIT 5. There are said to be 4 types of learners. Long back, if you see, when the Gurukula system was there, there used to be 4 types of learners. The master used to first declare the truth. What is meant by declaring the truth? There is one statement. Okay, one statement. Based on that, the person will introspect, meditate, and based on that, he'll realize what the truth is. For example, if it says Tatvamasi, so what does it mean? Have you read this? Thou art that. Okay. So the Guru declares or states the truth. So based on the participants, the students will introspect, and then based on that they realize Okay, I am that, and then they go away. They don't need any further education. Okay. The second, the students are still left. The master then actually elaborates on the truth. Okay, he explains, okay, Tattvamasi means thou art that, which means you are a human being, you are created from God, you have a body and then you have a soul, and both of them come together, and then you are here for a particular period. So some of them understand and they realize and go away. The third stage, the master actually illustrates the truth, and that's where he gives an example. He says, if you look at the river, you have the river and you have the air. When the river, when the water and the air come together, interact together, there is an air bubble which is formed. Similarly, your body and the soul, when they come together for a particular time, there are air bubbles which are formed. And the air bubble, each air bubble has a particular destination, has a particular life. After some time, after it has reached its destination or it has accomplished what its purpose is, then the water goes in the water, the air goes in the air. Okay, that's what human life is all about. Okay, now we have illustrated the truth. Some of them understand, go away. The fourth stage is, still people have not understood, that he actually gives them practical examples, which means he demonstrates and says, this is what the practices you can do. Okay, so as far as the COBIT is concerned, if you want to understand COBIT, okay, if you know this COBIT, this one statement should be enough to explain what COBIT is all about. It is a leading framework for the governance and management of enterprise IT. So we are looking at IT not from the perspective of just managing IT, but you're looking from the perspective of governance and management. Okay. So if you understand what is the distinction between governance and management and how you can implement an integrated framework using both governance and management, then I think you understood you can implement, then I think that's enough of COBIT. You understood COBIT. Now let's look at the evolution. Now COBIT, if you see, has evolved to become an effective enabler that harnesses and leverages the power of technology to meet enterprise goals. That is the primary objective. Okay, you are using IT, you are channelizing IT to meet the enterprise goals. You pick up any organization worth its name now, you find IT is a key enabler, is a key differentiator. And COBIT is an enabler for this. Do you also would have seen the information has evolved over a period of time. So information is said to be the currency of the 21st century. You pick up any organization, the value of the enterprise and the value of the information processing they have, how they're able to process information. Now the distinction between, let's say, Amazon or Flipkart or any other e-commerce vendor is not just in the technology, everybody is using the technology. It is in the specific process and the systems they have. And those are facilitated by using frameworks. COBIT is actually a framework of frameworks. How is it connected? I'll come to it a little later. One important distinction which I want to make, that COBIT is always kept ahead of the technology by transforming itself. Now how is it kept ahead? I'll see. I will discuss this a little later. I also want to share with you the perspective that COBIT will continue to remain relevant. How it's going to be possible, we'll see that. And if you have the knowledge of COBIT, you can definitely remain relevant and ahead. What is important to know is there are three pillars of any successful information technology deployment. You know, most of you know about this, the people, process, technology. You can buy the technology as required, but what most important is you need to implement the processes by using the people, by training the people. And that's where COBIT can be a differentiator. And any organization worth the name, when it's processing the information, it's important that you need to have control system in place. And control gives you, COBIT gives you the control architecture. Not only the control architecture, it also gives you the best practices which can be used with a systematic approach. So COBIT can be used not only as an isolated framework, you can use COBIT alone itself, just by itself, or COBIT can be integrated with other frameworks. I've conducted training or help organizations to implement COBIT. For example, let us say for Accenture. Now they were using ITIL for service management. One of the key things they were looking at, okay, how COBIT is going to be useful. When we did the training, one of the lessons they said we got was that we never looked at from the customer perspective, from the enterprise goals perspective. We always looked at delivering service from the IT. But the key aspect which was given in COBIT was connecting these dots which are missing. Now if you look at how COBIT has been used, COBIT has been downloaded thousands of times and widely discussed social media and used by national government, by auditors, etc. If you look at India, you find the CAG used COBIT extensively for doing audit of most of the governments. If you search for COBIT and CAG, you will get a lot of public documents which are available, which shows you how CAG has used COBIT for conducting IT audit, different types of IT audit. And this is being used extensively across the world by various regulators. The only difference is in India, I think we are very open. Most of our reports, when I showed this report to one of my friends in Singapore, who is the deputy director of CAG, he said it's really surprising that in India you're so transparent. People are openly criticizing and sharing so much of information. He says we also use, but most of the information is not shared in this particular way. So if you want to learn how to use COBIT, I think probably you can get this information from CAG. They also did a training from 3 days to 5 days, where ISACA chapter was also involved in training all their inspectors. They have more than 1,000 inspectors across India who are trained in COBIT, using COBIT for various types of IT audits. And RBA has been in the forefront in using COBIT extensively. They have used it in two perspectives. One is when the inspectors go and do the audit, they use COBIT for the purpose of benchmark, to evaluate, okay, whether the controls are implemented in various technology areas. And second, they also use COBIT for giving guidelines to the banks. So indirectly, although COBIT is not mandatory, you find it being used. And if you search for COBIT and IT enterprises in India, you find most of the top IT companies in India would be showcasing COBIT, saying that we have expertise in COBIT, we use COBIT for implementing e-governance services. They have various types of services where they use COBIT. One of the key aspects of COBIT is it helps you to orient the deployment of information technology to achieve the enterprise objectives by implementing a system of governance and management. One of the mantras of COBIT is that IT is complicated, but IT governance doesn't have to be. And COBIT is the de facto framework of choice for both professionals and enterprises. And the beauty is it helps you to remain relevant and also add value. I have used COBIT for auditing, as I said, for various types of enterprises. One of the first things we hit is, they say, what is the value addition of doing this particular audit? Or for the implementation of consulting assignment. In most of the cases, I use the COBIT best practices, customize it, and I found that I have always been able to provide value to the enterprise through my assignments. So it is also possible. How to actually dive down, pick up information from COBIT how you want, I'll come to that a little later. So it gives you the right blend of the practices, best practices. It also gives you a systematic approach. And the best part is it also has the vast knowledge repository which you can link together and use the way you want. So if you look at one of the important aspects in a COBIT training which is given is that COBIT is a comprehensive framework. It's an umbrella framework under which you can integrate various other frameworks. And the fact that IT resources are ubiquitous, which means that you find they're always available, they're everywhere. Now it's also important that you need to have the right frameworks in place, the right control frameworks in place, and that's where COBIT can play an important role. And the potential for using COBIT will definitely increase as we go on. One of the challenges most enterprises face is the misalignment of IT with enterprise. By using COBIT, you find that you can actually ensure that IT is aligned with the enterprise goals, with the enterprise objectives. So you ensure that IT is facilitating the enterprise to achieve their objectives. So as you find new technology comes in, you'll find more and more technology will come in, but more and more you find COBIT would be useful. How it could be useful, I'll come to that a little later. This is a recent survey which was done by ISACA, which says that 9 out of 10 users recommend using COBIT. So I want to know, take a small stop here and then ask you, how many of you are using COBIT? Okay. So you're using for the purpose of training and implementation?
Yes.
Yeah. Lopa, how about you?
For implementing IT governance.
You're using for implementing IT governance. Okay. What in your role? What is your role?
In that,
Yeah.
Basically, as a security architect, we'll be using this model of TOCA and COSO, as well as also we take this ISO 31000 to govern the rates.
Okay.
So to align this, generally we create the GRC framework. So it was very easy to handle the IT component if we take it as a baseline deadline.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm mapping COBIT with ITAL and ISO to be something.
Okay. How about you, sir?
Yeah, I'm using all the COBIT controls now with the GRC for the complete automation of the listing compliance.
Okay. How about others? Yeah?
We are doing some consulting engagement.
Okay.
Couple of customers. One manufacturing organization and one e-com.
Okay. How about others? You are not using COBIT, you are aware of COBIT, or you want to learn about COBIT?
More of awareness, sir.
Hmm?
Awareness, it's more of awareness by reading through the material.
Okay. If you look at the COBIT, in fact, in the first presentation which I made, I was supposed to speak at the first Karnataka conference of Visakha Bangalore chapter, and I was supposed to make a presentation for 40 minutes. I was wondering how I will cover the 40 minutes. Which will have to speak for 40 minutes. I was wondering how I will cover 40 minutes. Now this time, when I'm making a presentation, my challenge is what will I cover within 40 minutes? Because COBIT has expanded has gone through a big change in terms of the information explosion which is there. So it's very important for you to know how to navigate and pick up the right component of publication and get inside that particular information process and pick up the right information. So probably I think we'll share that with you as we go on as to how you can navigate, pick what you want. It's not necessary that you should read and understand every word of every publication which is on COBIT. Okay, and so the information is also not presented in a user-friendly way. Although we try to simplify, it still becomes complicated. But if you understand the overall architecture, how the this one is how COBIT has been designed, I'll come to this a little later, then you find it becomes easy for you to navigate, pick what you want. Like if you go to an expert and you go with a particular problem, the expert already knows or he knows where that information is available. So you should be able to pick that information as required. And that's what I think you should be able to learn in this particular session today. Now let me share with you some of my experiments of how I have used COBIT. I started my career as a chartered accountant for about 3 years. I was working in a company, then I went abroad, came back and then started my general practice. In 1992, I decided I should get into specialization. That's where I got into, at that time it was called EDP audit. And I was doing this EDP audit. In 1995, I came across this publication called Data Quest, where a small letters to the editor which talked about the CISA. So I talked to that lady and asked her what the CISA is all about. She said it's an international exam which is conducted once a year, every second Saturday of June. So you have to pay the fees in dollars and then you can take this exam. And she said it's very difficult for Indians to pass this exam. But I got curious, probably this could be something which could be useful. So I did research and then found that information. And I went and attended this review course. And then I found probably I take a chance. So I did that particular exam and surprisingly I passed. And then I came back to Bangalore. I was hunting out how many CISAs there. There are 4 CISAs. And 2 of them were in bank, another person is in an IT company. So we talked to them and said, why not start a chapter? Because more and more people could take this particular exam. And first time we formed the chapter, we had about 28 people taking the CISA exam. And 95 is when the Visakha Bangalore chapter was formed. Somewhere in the end of 1995 is where they released the draft publication of COBIT. And when I saw the draft publication of COBIT, that's what me fascinated. I said, okay, this could be a single source from which I can leverage and use it. And that's how I used it. In fact, I presented a case study you'll find on Visakha's website, which was published in 1998, talks about how I've used COBIT for IT audit. I also did one assignment in 1999, which is called as a COBIT compliance certification assignment for Infosys, where I actually integrated the principles of ISO. At that time, it was, what is it? Now it's 27001. Earlier it was BS 17799. I picked up there's something called the statement of applicability. I used the COBIT control objectives, the practices, and made the statement of applicability, picked up the relevant processes, and then based on that benchmark, the controls which are available in the Infosys package. And we picked up the 6 areas, and then based on that, we gave this certification. We sent this document to Visakha also, and they were surprised. They said we have never designed COBIT for that particular perspective, from that particular point of view. But they were surprised that this could come in. And we had a lot of discussion on how COBIT compliance certification could be used. And after nearly 15 years, now I think we've got this COBIT compliance certification, which is coming. There are different levels of certification. I've written a blog on my COBIT journey. If you want, you can read this.
Where is this available?
It's available on Visakha's website. So I'll talk about briefly about how I've used COBIT over 20 years and what's my vision about COBIT. To some extent, I'm covering here in this particular session. So what you see is COBIT has evolved from the control objectives. Earlier it was more the control objectives. Now it has become more a framework of governance. One of the aspects you need to consider whether COBIT is simple or complex. Do you think COBIT is complex or simple?
If you understand, then it's
Yeah. So till you understand, it looks complex. Till you get the mechanism how it works, it looks very complex. But once you know the mechanism, okay, this is how the information is structured, I think then you know it's not very complex. The only thing is you need to understand that COBIT is very dense. So you can take one control, this one, in fact I have done one BC assignment for one particular company where I just picked up one particular process and we did that assignment for them. That's, it was an implementation assignment and they created documentation was more than 2,000 pages. Picking up one particular control, so one particular process, but this ensure business continuity. And we took to the control objectives, expanded further. They say in business continuity, one of the things is they should create an organized structure which should be able to take care of the emergency situations. Okay, they should be able to define all the business process level in terms of criticality. So we actually did this. They should have a list of all the IT resources. Based on that, they should define what is the criticality for each of them. They should map the risk for each of them. Like that, we picked up each of this process and then build the documentation. So you can use COBIT one particular process, two processes as required, and you can expand it, explode it as required. Now you need to remember that COBIT is codified common sense. This is one of the comments which was made by an expert in COBIT. I asked him what COBIT is all about because when I became part of the COBIT 5 task force, I had the opportunity to interact with the COBIT experts who have been using COBIT for more than 20 years, who have been part of the COBIT team. And they said there's nothing new in COBIT. What is available in COBIT is codified common sense. And this is presented in a structured way. So what is important for you is you need to first understand the structure, the way the information is organized. Once you know the way information is organized, the second thing is you should know that you should pick up that information. This is very generic. You should be able to customize that information as per the requirements for the enterprise. That's where your skill set comes in. One of the questions which I always get asked is, can we automate this COBIT process? Okay, I'll pick up all this information, whatever is there. In fact, if you don't know, if you want to read the COBIT control objectives and you want to use it, what I suggest is you download the COBIT toolkit. It's a zip file which has all the COBIT presentations. Not only that, they also given the COBIT control, now it's called as management practice and activities. All that is given for all the processes available in an Excel file. So you can readily use it. Okay. So all the content is available. Now the important thing, your skill set comes in where you have to actually customize it as per the enterprise requirements. Now let's look at the design thinking as far as COBIT is concerned. When COBIT was designed, what is the perspective from which it was designed? If you know the design, then I think understanding the document becomes much more simpler, much more easier. The first thing you need to understand, there's something called the 5 principles. What are the 5 principles? First principle talks about meet the stakeholder needs. Now how are these principles used? The principles are used for preparing the documentation of COBIT, which means all the information which is there in COBIT is based on this particular principles, which means the philosophy of COBIT is ingrained inside the content with these particular principles. Okay, the first principle is meeting the stakeholder needs. Now you have 2 stakeholders, the internal stakeholder, the external stakeholder. Any IT deployment you go, you have to first understand that IT is used for the purpose of meeting the enterprise objectives. Based on the enterprise objectives, you have the IT objectives. Based on the IT objectives, you have the IT processes. Based on the IT process, you have IT activities. For each of them, you should know exactly what are the goals and objectives. Based on that, you should not only set the goals and the controls, you should also have a performance measuring mechanism. The second thing is covering the enterprise end to end. So this is where COBIT plays a key role, where you are able to ensure that the enterprise, all the activities of the enterprise end to end are covered as far as the IT is concerned. You also have the third principle which talks about using a single integrated framework. So if you look at, let's say, other frameworks such as ITIL or ISO, they have a particular perspective, they have a particular objective, they have a particular breadth and depth. They are focused on a particular area. Whereas for COBIT is concerned, COBIT is very narrow, it's macro, and you can integrate other frameworks under that. So when you're using COBIT, it becomes easy for you to integrate other frameworks as required. And the fourth one is enabling a holistic approach. And this is a major evolution as far as COBIT 5 is concerned, where we have this what's called as 7 enablers. I'll come to this enablers a little later. Where using the enablers, you can actually build your core philosophy of how governance and management control is going to be implemented within the organization. And the last one is separating governance and management. So it means you need to clearly distinguish that governance is something which is done by the board of directors of the senior management, and management is something which is done by the IT. And based on the governance framework, based on the strategic direction which is set by the management, the IT operation, the other, the tactical and operational management will actually implement these ideas. Now, if you look at quickly the principles, the first one is meeting stakeholder needs. What are the fundamental objectives? It starts with the fundamental premise that every enterprise is oriented towards achieving value creation. So, if you implement IT, you have to ensure there's a value creation. Okay, that's the primary benefit, which means if you are investing in IT, you should realize the benefits. Now, because IT is a key driver, is a key enabler, you also need to ensure that you use it for achieving the strategic and competitive advantage. The second principle is covering the enterprise end to end. Now, if you see what happens when you implement COBIT is you are able to build the required organizational structure in place. So it starts right from the bottom where you're looking at the owners and stakeholders who actually delegate the responsibility to the governing body, and they get reports who in turn set the direction to the management, and based on that the management it gives instructions to the operational. So you have a mechanism through which you create an organizational structure which can be used across the enterprise. You just look at the responsibility matrix. You also have the responsibility rating matrix which is given in COBIT. Using this, you find this concept can be used for organizations for many years ahead in the future. Because if you look at the past, let's say 2 centuries back or 20 centuries back, commerce was always there. When you do commerce, then you have people who are actually have to be delegated certain responsibilities, and you have to have a mechanism through which you are able to get the task done and monitor what they are doing properly. Now, COBIT gives you the particular holistic structure through which you can actually ensure that you are able to delegate and ensure that accountability is established. You are able to orient people toward the enterprise objectives and also control that they are working in that particular area. Next is applying a single integrated framework. This is first use it inside for the COBIT repository itself. If you look at ISACA itself, ISACA has got multiple documents. We had earlier we had a lot of guidance notes, which was validity framework and various other COBIT publications. The idea was to create a common pool of all this information in one place. Then also use the knowledge base which is there from other frameworks and create one common repository. And the idea was that you create what is called as COBIT enabler guides. There are 7 enablers. I'll come to this a little later. And you also have COBIT professional guides, which can be used for specific areas. For example, there is a professional guide for information security, there is a professional guide for assurance, like that. There are specific areas for which COBIT publication is available. Then you have this enabling a holistic approach, which gives you a structure in which how you can monitor the deployment of IT. You set the enterprise goals. Based on the enterprise goals, you have the IT goals, and based on that, you have the enabler goals. These are the 7 enablers. You pick up any organization, you find the 7 enablers will have to be applied in different proportions as required. The core of this is the principles, policies, and framework. Any organization, whether it's commercial or non-commercial, you find they have to have the principles, policies, and frameworks. This is the first thing you need to evaluate, whether the organization has the required principles, policies, and frameworks. And the next thing is, you know that information is the currency of the organization. So you need to have mechanism for managing and monitoring the deployment of information, providing access to information. And next we have the technology infrastructure which is required, which is given in the form of services, infrastructure, and applications. And we have the people skills and competencies. And these you call it as the tangible resources. On the top layer, you have something called the intangible resources, where you need to have processes in place, and where you need to have the right organizational structure in place. And this also should be driven by the proper tone at the top, which is given through the culture, ethics, and behavior. Now you look at most of the corporate governance principles or the governance principles, they're talking about these key aspects. That you need to have risk management, you need to have corporate governance structure, you need to have effective system and process in place. So this way, if you use this enabler, now you see whether the enterprise was doing business or commerce 20 years back and now or 20 years later, you find these enablers will still continue to remain relevant. And if you know how to use this principal enablers for any enterprise, for example, let's say if you have to audit tomorrow for Flipkart or Amazon, using these concepts, these principles, and the knowledge repository of COBIT, you can definitely do an audit. And not only do an audit, you can also find areas of weaknesses and suggest remedial measures how they can improve. This gives you the last principle, which is separating governance from management. Now these are the 37 processes. you find on top you have the 5 governance processes, which are the key additions in COBIT 5, and then you have the management domain, which had 32. Initially, if you look at the distinction, what is the evolution of COBIT from COBIT 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, you find more and more the stress on this one aligned, planned, organized domain. So which means more processes are there in aligned, planned, organized. And then next you had build, acquire, and implement. In the earlier edition of COBIT, there are a lot of processes which are focused on delivery, service, and support. For example, now we have only 6 processes. Probably look at the documentation earlier, might be there are about 12 or 13 processes. Okay, so the major focus, most of the processes used to be in the build, acquire, implement, deliver, service, and support. But now you find more focus, more knowledge available in the first domain, which is the second domain, which is aligned, planned, and organized. And all this information is presented in a structured way. What is the structure? I'll explain to you shortly. Now, this is the second knowledge repository. COBIT not only gives you the knowledge repository with best practices, it also gives you the implementation approach, which is very simple, which can be used for implementing any framework. Okay. It fundamentally starts with, first of all, identifying what are the drivers, why do you want to do this particular change, what are the pain points, what are the problems, and then based on that you decide where are we now, and then you evaluate, okay, where do you want to go, and then you identify the gap between where you are now and where do you want to be, and based on that you decide what needs to be done, which means to prepare a roadmap, and then you implement it, which means to decide how do we get there, and then after that you evaluate and check whether you actually reach there, and then you embed that approach and make it a part of the regular day-to-day process. So you find this common process of implementing COBIT practices could be implemented across any framework. You also have the process capability levels, which are brought in COBIT 5. This is a little different compared to what is there in COBIT. Okay, before we come to the COBIT road ahead, let me give you a structure of how, based on what you understood now in COBIT, you find you have this 5 principles, you have the 7 enablers, and then you have the 37 processes. Okay, you also have 4 dimensions of measurement for the COBIT as far COBIT is concerned. You need to understand that these are organized in the form of a tree. Okay, if you've got a tree, you've got a particular branch, that branch has got particular this one leaves, and again it integrates. Further you have further branches like that, it segregates. So you can take one particular principle, for that particular principle you have enablers, under that enablers you have processes. Like that you can actually dive down and go, dive down and use the content from COBIT as required. Practically when you use the COBIT, you need to remember that these principles are more of a philosophical nature. What you will use is the underlying document. For example, let's say you're using COBIT for implementing information security. You will go through the COBIT process document, and based on the COBIT process document, you will pick up the specific process, adopt it, customize as required. ISACA also comes out with specific publications, and that's where you have COBIT 5 for information security, which is a specialized publication for using COBIT for information security. You can use COBIT 5 for information security for that particular purpose. So what is important is you should be able to navigate, you know that these principles are the philosophy behind COBIT. What is important is to look at the next layer, which is the enablers. What are the 7 enablers? Any process you want to implement, any organization you want to implement COBIT, you need to look at what are the enablers for that. How are these enablers relevant? And for those enablers, which are the processes which are relevant? For example, let us say I've used COBIT for business continuity management for an organization. For business continuity, there are 4 key processes. In the key processes, there are certain management practices. And for that particular management practices, there are certain activities. So depending on the need, you pick up that particular set of knowledge practice, which from the knowledge repository of COBIT, you pick up this particular information, then you customize it as required. And then evaluate, use that as a benchmark for evaluation. So what is expected as far as COBIT is concerned in the future? As of now, what I foresee is that generally every 4 years they used to come with a new evolution of COBIT. But the way COBIT 5 has expanded dramatically in terms of different publications of this one, I don't see that they will come out with another publication for maybe another 3 to 4 years. So it means COBIT 5 could be probably the one which will have the longest life. What they're planning to do is build artifacts and tools around COBIT which could help you to implement COBIT in a much better way. Like we have COBIT for information, COBIT 5 for information security, COBIT 5 for assurance. Like that, there are multiple publications which are being used. So you have more and more user-friendly templates and tools which will be available. Okay, based on this discussion we had, what are the actionable insights? Like I said earlier, COBIT is quite dense, and the extent to which they can expand it depends on your own skill and expertise. So So there's nothing like you buy a tool and you can implement COBIT. You need to know how to select the specific processes, the specific management practices, and then customize it as required and use it for the purpose of evaluation. That's where your skill set always will come in. COBIT can be used to the extent required. It's not necessary that you will use everything of COBIT. I always compare COBIT to a 5-star buffet. If you go to a 5-star buffet, it's not that you will taste each and everything. Okay, you will decide, okay, what is your specific requirement. Based on that, you will go to that particular area and then you will eat what you want. Similarly, in COBIT also, you should know what is that you are using COBIT for, why are you using that COBIT for, and then based on that, you should navigate, dive down, pick what information you want, then accordingly customize and use it. This is the most important thing you should know. So for that, you should know how to customize and use. And this is where the COBIT template could be useful. You should navigate through the 37 processes, pick up the relevant process, adopt that as required, and use it. The value of COBIT is not in its content. The value of COBIT is what you are able to bring to the table by effective deployment, by using your own expertise. And this is where interpretation of the knowledge of COBIT becomes very, very critical. On the 20th year of COBIT, we had some competition from Isaka where they said we sent some photos promoting COBIT. This is one of the tips which I put. We took this photo in Bangalore Palace. I also decided to give a quote. Now, what do you think this quote is all about? If you just take this, like you remember I told you about declaring the truth. If you just take this one particular statement, you're able to understand and interpret it. You can use COBIT for any organization. So if you want to implement COBIT, the most important thing, you need to get the right landscape. Okay, what is the area, what is the enterprise area where you want to implement. Second thing, we need to map it to the enterprise landscape, the nature of the businesses, the organizational structure, the required compliance in the IT. So it means these 4 aspects of enterprise, you need to understand and customize the COBIT content so that you can provide value to the enterprise. This is another important tip which I thought I should. The critical success factor of successful implementing COBIT is knowing the why before the what. It's not enough if you know what can be done for that enterprise. You should know why it is required. So if you know the why, then the what becomes much more easier. So COBIT has got the 17 enterprise goals, 17 IT goals. So you can actually navigate and pick up the enterprise goals. Based on that, you can pick up the IT goals. And then based on that, you pick up the IT processes. And then based on that, you pick up the management practices. This is another statement you said. If you look at a musical instrument, let's say bansuri or any for that matter, if it's in the hands of the master, it gives melody. The same bansuri, if you try to play, it doesn't give you melody. So what is that which gives you the melody? The melody is not in the instrument. The melody is in the skill of that particular player. Okay. In COBIT also, COBIT only has information. Okay. The skill set, the value of COBIT is in how you're able to customize it as required. This I thought is an important lesson if you look at from the point of value creation. Especially you, all of you as professionals, I think you're going to get this example very clearly. You see, a bar of iron costs only rupees 250 rupees. But if it's made into horseshoe, it's worth 1,000 rupees. Same thing, it's converted, it's made into needles, it's worth 10,000 rupees. But it's made into balance springs for the watches, it's worth rupees 1 lakh. The same bar of iron, based on how it is implemented, the value keeps increasing. Similarly, the value of COBIT is not what it is, but what you make out of it. So you can add value to COBIT with your skills and expertise. So the most important thing which is required is your ability to understand, interpret and apply COBIT as required. Okay, this is broadly what I want to convey. So thank you. If you've got any questions, I'll take them. Giving you a helicopter view of what COBIT is all about. My objective was to just get you interested that okay, there is certain thing called COBIT and you should know how to navigate it. So what I suggest is you should go back, look at the COBIT document and see okay, what is that which can be used, in what way it does it apply. And you need to invest a little bit of amount of time in this. Without investment of time, it will be still in the periphery. So my idea was to just get you excited about, okay, COBIT is the document which is there, which is available free to most of the members, and then you can customize and use it for any type of an application. And it can help you to remain relevant in the technology area. It said once a gentleman, a very experienced person, attended an interview, and the interviewer asked him, how many years of experience you have? And this guy said, sir, I have got 15 years of experience. And this fellow went through the biodata, and then he said, gentlemen, I would like to make a small correction. It's not 15 years of experience. It's 1 year experience repeated 15 times. So I would like you to look at that and see what is the type of experience you are getting. Now that's where I think the knowledge which is there, the knowledge deposit which is there in COBIT is very, very dense. You can definitely use it and remain relevant. Not only that, you can definitely add value. Okay? So then, yeah.
So actually, I think you have experience in COBIT.
You have very rich experience in implementing COBIT and also talking to the enterprises, providing value of COBIT to them. So where exactly you have seen, at least a practitioner point of view, the real challenge where applying COBIT? Where do you see? I think you would have worked with the service industry and also manufacturing industry, user industries. So where do you felt, or maybe a case where you have really struggle in fitting COBIT?
Okay. So I'll give, I think, I will cover this to some extent, but I'll give you my perspective based on my example. Okay, one of the first challenge you'll meet when you want to go about implementing COBIT is, they say, why should I implement it? What is the value? Okay, we are already using ITIL, we are already using ISO, we are already using so many frameworks. What is the value addition? So the first thing is to actually create an awareness that, okay, this is what COBIT could be used for. And the next thing they ask is, okay, COBIT could be useful, but give me a list of organizations where COBIT has been used. Okay, especially in our sector, give me certain case studies or where this could be used. Okay, and then you also find that, okay, COBIT is good, okay, finally you are able to convince us, it's good, but the problem is we are already into so many things. Maybe we'll look at it a little later. So you find most of the enterprises are in a firefighting mode. So you find they don't have the time for this one. So this requires, if you want to implement COBIT, what is most important is you need to understand the management, you need to understand the pain point. Quite often if you look at COBIT implementation, it can come from different perspectives. Generally it comes from the regulator. For example, let's say the regulator has done the audit. Okay, and then they say that, okay, the IT audit is not done or this is not done. Based on that, they say get this done, and then you have COBIT implementation, I think, comes in. For example, most of enterprises now, they have to go in for IFC implementation. IFC control is something is applicable for most of the companies. So if IFC control is implemented, what are the framework you can use? You can use COSO. Along with COSO, you can use COBIT. So if you take any large organization, then you find this is a basic document which has to be used. So if you get an expert to implementer to come and do the training, they'll tell you this is how you have to get it. That will be one thing. The second thing is where the auditor of that particular company has used COBIT for doing an audit, and he finds certain areas of weaknesses and he has given recommendations. And then he says that he is using COBIT. And then they find that, okay, the organization is using COBIT, the auditor is using COBIT, maybe then we should also start exploring COBIT. The third perspective from which COBIT is used is where the management, the top management has attended some conference, something, or they come to know that COBIT is something which is there. They get fascinated by this and said, no, we should go ahead and implement COBIT. So these are the different dimensions. Another important dimension is the customer perspective. Where if the company is actually a service delivery company, it actually provides services. The customer says, okay, do we have this type of control? What framework do you use? So we would like you to see whether you are using COBIT. And then the organization says, yes, I think we should start using COBIT. That way, these are the different dimensions to be used. So the challenge always is first creating the awareness for education, creating the value addition. Okay.
Thank you.
See, now, basically, if you go to any organization today, you have ITIL, you have ISO 27001, ISO 20000, ISO 2302.
Yeah.
Now, let's say as an organization, now I implement all these things, there is an implementation time,
Yeah.
there is audit accreditation and also continuous audit.
Okay.
And whereas in COBIT, now if somebody asks, is it the combination of all in one? Question number one. Question number two is there is any periodical, like the accreditation and the renewal of certifications are there in COBIT or not?
Okay, there are multiple questions. I'll just divide and then take this particular thing. First is, whether the periodic audit as such, okay, COBIT is a framework which is not a standard, okay. Only recently COBIT has come out with a certification, this one, where you can also get accreditation, okay. Once you get accreditation, the standard they follow is similar to what is followed by any ISO organization. The certification is valid for a particular period. After that, you have to get recertification. That's one, this one, okay. The second part is, okay, do you want to use COBIT? Okay, do you need, there are so many publications, there are so many frameworks, how do I use that? You need to remember that two perspectives from which COBIT can be used. One is as the enterprise, across the enterprise, which means across the enterprise you decide to use COBIT. In very few organizations this is used across the enterprise in totality. Most of the cases COBIT is used in a particular sector, particular area where it is very critical. So you need to decide, okay, which is the area where I want to use COBIT, focus COBIT on that particular area only. So it's not necessary you need to look at the entity as a whole. You can decide to focus on a particular area. But ideally, the best value comes in when you use it as a GIT framework, as an enterprise as a whole. And many of the regulators are also driving toward that. For example, if you look at the IFC, the corporate governance requirement, all those things, they talk about having this one risk management system in place. They say you need to have a governance system in place. You need to have internal control framework. For doing all that, you need to use frameworks such as COBIT, COSO, and others. So you have to pick up that particular thing, build that, and then as required, you should be able to build that controls as required. Like I said, COBIT is COBIT codified common sense. It's not that when you start using COBIT, you'll find everything is new. Okay, you're not doing anything. It could be possible, most of the things you have implemented it. Okay, what is important is for you to identify what are the gaps. And if the gaps are there, there are risks. So whether the risks are acceptable. Okay, that's what you need to look at. And most important thing, this is the final, this one I'd like to give you. The most important thing for this one is, if you want to implement COBIT, one question the organization is going to ask is, so what? Which means you should go to demonstrate the value which is going to come. So you should be able to clearly show how you are able to bring in value to the enterprise. Okay, and that happens by reading, interpreting, and applying, and customizing COBIT as per the enterprise requirement. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. In fact, it's a pleasure to hear you, especially on the topic which is very close and dear to you. The examples that I gave on the Niagara Falls and also the iron rod, etc., getting the perspective towards the usage of COBIT-5 was very good. Again, giving us a structured approach of using this entire COBIT-5 framework is definitely very interesting and insightful. Thank you.